moment did not begin with confrontation. There was no raised voice, no sudden movement, and no visible tension that would have suggested what was about to happen. Che Guevara was present among others, observed rather than isolated, evaluated rather than challenged. Those around him believed they understood his position. They believed they understood his limits. Che was seen as predictable, constrained by circumstance, and already defined by the situation he was in. Expectations were fixed before anything occurred. This is what made the moment effective. Che did not act immediately. He did not interrupt, correct, or escalate. He waited. The setting was not private. It was not controlled in his favor. Whatever happened would be seen and heard by more than one person. That visibility mattered. When Che finally acted, it was not dramatic. There was no attempt to dominate the room or assert authority through force. The action itself was simple, deliberate, and precise. It did not rely on surprise, but on timing. Those watching did not react at first. The action did not fit the pattern they expected. It did not confirm their assumptions, nor did it challenge them directly. Instead, it introduced uncertainty. Silence followed not because people were shocked, but because they were recalculating. Che's action reframed the situation without announcing itself as a challenge. He did not seek permission and he did not seek approval. He acted as if the outcome was already clear. This posture removed the option of immediate response from those present. What mattered was not the action alone, but the confidence with which it was carried out. Che did not look for reaction. He did not wait to see if anyone objected. He continued as though the moment required no validation. This behavior disrupted the informal hierarchy of the space. Those who expected to observe found themselves being observed. Those who assumed control realized it had not been asserted. The shift was subtle, but it was visible. No one intervened. Not because intervention was impossible, but because it was unclear how to intervene without escalating the situation beyond what anyone was prepared for. The safest response became silence. That silence was collective. It was not agreement and it was not fear. It was hesitation. In moments where expectations collapse, hesitation fills the gap. Che understood this dynamic. He did not rush to fill the silence. He allowed it to settle. The absence of immediate reaction amplified the action itself. What might have seemed minor in another context became significant because it stood uncontested. Silence, in this case, functioned as acknowledgement. Those present later described the moment differently. Some minimized it. Others exaggerated it. What remained consistent was that no one could clearly explain why nothing was said. The silence resisted interpretation. This resistance is important. Moments that are easily explained lose their power quickly. Moments that remain ambiguous persist. Che's action fell into the latter category. He did not repeat the action. He did not elaborate. Once the silence took hold, the moment was complete. Any further movement would have reduced its effect. Che understood when to stop. What followed was not confrontation, but compliance. The situation did not escalate. It resolved itself quietly. The room returned to function, but something had shifted. Expectations had been corrected. This was not a victory in the conventional sense. No one was defeated. No argument was won. What occurred was a recalibration. Che demonstrated that assumptions about him were incomplete. The significance of the moment lies not in what Che did, but in what others did not do. They did not interrupt. They did not challenge. They did not respond. Silence became the outcome. In the next part, we will examine what assumptions existed before this moment, why Che was underestimated by those present, and how that underestimation made the silence possible. Before the moment unfolded, Che Guevara had already been categorized by those around him. These categories were not formed through direct confrontation, but through assumption. Che was seen through the lens of context rather than capability. He was perceived as constrained. His physical condition, his surroundings, and his lack of immediate authority contributed to the belief that he was limited in what he could do. This perception was reinforced by routine. When a situation appears stable, people people assume the individuals within it are predictable. Che's behavior prior to the moment supported this assumption. He did not provoke attention. He did not challenge informal authority. He did not signal intent. This restraint was misread as passivity rather than calculation. Those present believed that control had already been established. They believed they were observing, not participating. Che was treated as an object of attention rather than a source of initiative. This asymmetry shaped expectations. Underestimation often occurs when observers mistake silence for submission. In Che's case, silence functioned as observation. He was not disengaged. He was measuring the environment, the people within it, and the boundaries of response. The setting itself encouraged misjudgment. Familiarity reduces vigilance. When nothing unusual happens for long enough, people stop preparing for it. Che's presence became normalized. Once normalized, it was no longer actively evaluated. This normalization created a narrow window. In that window, actions that would normally provoke response pass unchallenged because they do not fit existing models. Che acted within that window. Importantly, Che did not rely on force or confrontation to exploit this underestimation. He relied on clarity. His action was executed without hesitation, which removed the opportunity for immediate correction by others. Those observing were caught between interpretations. Was this a breach of expectation or a minor deviation? That uncertainty delayed response. Delay produced silence. Che understood that underestimation is not a lack of intelligence. It is a product of context. People often misjudge not because they are incapable, but because they are comfortable. Comfort produces assumption. This dynamic explains why the silence felt involuntary. No one chose to remain silent. Silence emerged because no one was prepared to respond. The situation had not been defined as one that required action. After the moment passed, reinterpretation began. Observers reassessed Che's position retroactively. What had seemed constrained now appeared deliberate. What had seemed passive now appeared strategic. However, this reassessment occurred after the silence had already done its work. Once a moment passes without challenge, it acquires legitimacy. Che did not need to defend his action. Silence had already validated it. This shift in perception did not require words. It required time. The delay between action and response allowed understanding to replace reaction. Che's underestimation had become visible. In the next part, we will examine what exactly Che did in that moment, why the action itself was less important than its timing, and how timing turned a simple act into a defining one. What Che Guevara did in that moment was not extraordinary in form. There was no display of force, no verbal challenge, and no attempt to assert dominance. The action itself was simple. Its effectiveness came from when it occurred and how it was framed. Che acted at a point when the environment was stable. Nothing in the room suggested urgency. Conversations, movements, and expectations followed a familiar rhythm. This stability created predictability, and predictability created vulnerability. By choosing that moment, Che avoided confrontation. He did not interrupt an argument or oppose a command. He acted during a lull, when attention was relaxed and reactions were unprepared. Timing removed resistance before it could form. The action did not seek permission. Che did not ask, explain, or announce intention. He moved as if the action were already accepted. This posture shifted the burden of response onto others. Instead of asking whether he was allowed to act, observers were forced to decide whether they would stop him. They did not. Stopping him would have required clarity. Someone would have needed to articulate why the action was unacceptable. In the absence of a clear rule being broken, intervention would have appeared arbitrary. No one wanted to assume that role. Che understood this. He did not challenge authority directly because direct challenges invite direct responses. He acted within ambiguity. Ambiguity delays reaction, and delay creates silence. The simplicity of the action also mattered. Complex actions invite interpretation. Simple actions force immediate judgment. Observers had no time to reframe what they were seeing. They could only register that something unexpected had occurred. As seconds passed without response, the action became normalized. What initially felt questionable began to feel accepted. Silence transformed uncertainty into legitimacy. This is how unchallenged actions become established facts. Che did not linger. He did not reinforce the action with additional movement or speech. Once silence settled, he allowed the moment to close. Prolonging it would have reopened the possibility of reaction. Ending it preserved its effect. Those present later struggled to explain why they did not respond. Many cited surprise. Others cited uncertainty. None described fear. This distinction matters. Silence was not imposed. It emerged. This emergence reveals something about how authority operates in informal spaces. Authority is not only maintained through command. It is maintained through expectation. When expectation collapses, authority hesitates. Che's action worked because it exposed that hesitation without confronting it. He demonstrated that control existed more as assumption than enforcement. Once that assumption wavered, even briefly, the structure revealed its fragility. The moment did not produce applause or protest. Produced recalibration. Those present adjusted their understanding of Che's position without acknowledging the adjustment openly. Silence allowed this adjustment to occur without embarrassment. In this way, the action achieved its purpose without escalating the situation. Che did not gain power. He gained space. Space to move, space to be reassessed, and space to be taken seriously. In the final part, we will examine what followed this moment, how the silence altered subsequent interactions, and why the effect of this action lasted longer than the action itself. The silence that followed Che Guevara's action did not end when the moment passed. Continued into what followed. Silence has momentum. Once established, it reshapes interaction without needing reinforcement. After the moment, Che was no longer treated as predictable. Nothing about his behavior changed outwardly, but perception did. Those who had previously observed him with certainty now observed him with caution. This shift did not require acknowledgement. It operated quietly, just as the moment itself had. Conversations resumed, but their tone adjusted. Decisions that might have been made casually were now reconsidered. Che was no longer assumed to be passive within the structure. He had demonstrated that assumptions could be wrong, and that demonstration could not be undone. The silence functioned as a boundary. It signaled that the previous framework for understanding Che was incomplete. People adjusted not because they were instructed to, but because uncertainty had entered the equation. Uncertainty changes behavior more reliably than confrontation. Importantly, Che did not attempt to capitalize on the moment overtly. He did not repeat the action, reference it, or use it to assert authority. Doing so would have converted ambiguity into conflict. By leaving the moment unspoken, he preserved its effect. This restraint reinforced the silence rather than breaking it. The absence of commentary prevented others from reframing the moment as insignificant. Without words, the silence retained control over interpretation. Over time, the moment became difficult to describe precisely. Witnesses remembered its effect more clearly than its details. This imbalance is telling. Actions that disrupt expectation often resist clean narration. Their impact lies in how they change behavior, not in how they are retold. The silence also protected those present. Speaking about the moment would have required admitting misjudgment. Silence allowed everyone to adjust without losing face. In this way, the silence served multiple functions simultaneously. What Che achieved was not dominance, but repositioning. He shifted how he was seen without demanding recognition. This shift did not reverse outcomes or alter larger structures, but it changed the immediate environment. In contexts defined by constraint, such changes matter. This is why the moment endured in memory. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was effective. Che did not need to explain himself. Silence carried the message. The broader lesson of this moment extends beyond Che. It illustrates how action, timing, and restraint can intersect to produce influence without escalation. Silence, when properly timed, becomes a form of communication. Che understood this. He did not seek to control the room. He allowed the room to realize that control was not as secure as it appeared. That realization required no words. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of recalibration. And in that recalibration, Che was no longer underestimated.